Welcome, my name is Dominic and this is Max Level EDC, and today we are going to do a knife review. Kind of. The thing is, the Civivi Riffle has already been reviewed so many times, I don't think I could add all that much. However, I have a big question, at least in my mind. Is this a good budget knife for food prep tasks? That's really the question I wanted to ask, because I've always liked the Civivi Praxis as my go-to food prep EDC knife. It's nice and thin, it's nice and long, it's got a nice belly to it, and it's so far has worked really well for that purpose as a budget knife. I also have myself a Spyderco Spydichef, a very not budget knife that is specifically designed for this task. So I wondered, would the Riffle be a reasonable substitute? It appears like it could be. It's still quite thin, it's got a full flat grind, it's in 14C, which will be great for corrosion resistance, and it's of a blade length, 3.5 inches, that is going to be a lot easier for me to carry because it's legal, where the 3.75 inch blade on the Praxis is not. However, we need to test it. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through a series of different tests. We're going to cut up some apples, some oranges, we're going to make some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I'm going to kind of do that kind of as a background info. So you're welcome to watch that section, but we're not going to be doing much talking. I'm just going to be going through it. I will also be putting right here a timestamp that you can go with this video if you just want to see the conclusions and we talk about who was the winner of this contest. And I have to say, it's going to surprise you which one ends up coming out on top. So actually that was really informative because I've never actually put all three of these knives together in one place so I could actually compare them one to one. What is really surprising here is that the worst performing knife overall is actually the Praxis, which really surprised me because it's one of my favorites and I've always liked it for food prep. But what I didn't realize is it's not the best for spreading things onto like bread, and I think it's because of the curvature. Now it's still a wonderful knife and it's one of my favorites, but in this particular task it wasn't as good as I would have expected. Now the Spydichef predictably was good at some things, a lot of the food prep stuff really well, right? It was good at it. What I was surprised to find is that there were some things it did worse than the Riffle. Where the Riffle was awesome is actually this cut an apple better than any of the two knives, including the Spydichef, which really surprised me. I also thought more stuff would get caught in it, and it didn't. And for spreading like the peanut butter and jelly, what really surprised me is this was better at spreading on the bread than either of these two knives. And that was really interesting. Now, one thing we did notice for both the Riffle and the Praxis is that the flipper tab definitely does get in the way. Okay, so it definitely gets in the way when you're reaching deep into a container. Now, if you have, now that was a good challenge because I didn't have that much peanut butter left in that container, or I should say, I always say peanut butter, but it's sunflower butter, right? And I didn't have much, so I had to stick the whole knife in, and of course I got peanut butter on the flipper tabs. So that, in that case, obviously the Spydichef is definitely the best. Now the other thing is cutting the orange, or at least peeling the orange. The cool thing about the Praxis is that the transition from choil to blade is the perfect depth, right, to keep the knife blade from penetrating deep into the flesh of that particular fruit. And it was better than these other two for that purpose. Now this one does have a nice transition, which is very helpful. But really with these two, what I was doing is controlling the depth just manually by how hard I'm pressing into the flesh. Now, the oranges are easy to peel, but there are other fruits out there that are much more difficult. So in those cases, this may not be deep enough. So you're still going to end up having to control it. The other thing is cutting an apple sometimes. You don't have a cutting board, right? So being able to rotate the apple and cut it and be able to hold both pieces, having the blade not be a problem. This is where I was shocked to find that the Riffle was better than either of the other two knives. And I'm not sure exactly why. It just felt better, easier, more controlled. And I didn't feel like I don't know, maybe it's the handle. Maybe it's the handle. And that's another thing I want to talk about, and then I'll end this little discussion. I have thought I always liked Spydichef, and from a material perspective, it's still ideal compared to these other two. But when these handles get wet, like really wet, this is a very slippery knife. This plain, I think it's a bead blasted finish on this titanium is really slippery, especially compared to the micarta from the Riffle, which actually got grippier, it felt like, with water, which is amazing. So right now, which answering the first question of, can I substitute the Riffle for the Praxis as a food prep knife in my kit? The answer is a hell yes. In fact, in some ways, I think it performed better than the Praxis did. Not even equal, I think genuinely better. So that's great. Now, I should also mention here that all three of these, before I even started the process, were all lubed up with Super Lube, which is a food grade lubricant. It's the only lubricant that I use. Now, it's not going to last as long as most pivot lubes will, but this is actually food grade. I only use this for that exact reason. I actually do use my knives on a regular basis for food prep. Like you saw, making peanut butter jelly sandwiches, cutting up apples, and so on. I don't care. If the knife can't take getting rinsed in the sink or cutting up an apple, then there's no point in having one. There really isn't. Inevitably, it's a tool, and I'm not going to coddle it. So for me, it has to be able to do these things, which is why I always use lubricant that is food grade, and I definitely recommend that one. So there you go. The Riffle, definitely the winner overall. It's $55, for 14C28, which is a very corrosion resistant steel, by the way. According to Aaron Thomas, it's got like an 8 out of 10 rating, or over an 8 out of 10 in corrosion resistance. That's fantastic. It has all the features that I wanted. It's definitely one of my favorite budget steels. And come to find out that the shape of this handle and the shape of the blade on this actually makes it a little bit better than the Praxis. So can I give up the Praxis in my EDC? Yeah, I think I can. And the reason I was looking into something is this knife, unfortunately, is not legal in a lot of places that I go because it is over the 3.5 inch mark. I think it's 3.7 inches. Let me find my ruler here. And so for that reason, I wanted to have another option. Yeah, 3 3/4 inches basically. So yeah, I think the Riffle does a good job. The other thing I noticed is that the swedge, although it looks amazing, does make it a little bit harder to wipe off, the peanut butter and or jelly off of the blade, or any other thing that you're doing, just because you have two edges to work with versus the one. And I didn't have that problem with either the Spydichef or with the Riffle. So really, really happy with that. That was actually really useful to me. I hope it was useful to you. But that's it for today. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk again soon.